Who is Final Fantasy's best warrior? I know the answer, but it's been a rocky road to get there. These are the physical attackers of the series, and while some are massive titans who can literally cut the earth in half, some are just throwing rocks and chopping lettuce. So I'm gonna take you through all of them in the best way possible. A tier list. So our tiers are World Ending, McMansion McDestroyer, Effective Lumberjack, Expert Slap Fighter, and gave me a little teensy weensy paper cut. Those are self-explanatory, I think. So Final Fantasy I, the warrior. This class attacks. That's its entire job. The better the equipment, the better the attack, and it really can't do anything else, and it doesn't need to. This game is balanced around having a varied team, and the warrior does its job pretty well. And the weapons it gets, most importantly swords and axes, are good. But this class cannot use the best weapons because it needs to be upgraded to do that. Give me a second for that. So this class is an effective lumberjack. Might change that later depending on who else gets at it. And while you can certainly go through the game with just a warrior, you're probably gonna want to upgrade your warrior to a knight, because the knight can use the best swords in the game, and these truly can do massive damage. And even better, the knight gets a little bit of white magic ability. And while you could beat the game with just a knight without too much difficulty, this guy isn't breaking the game wide open by himself without significant investment. So he's gonna go into the McMansion Destroyer tier. Oh, I messed it up. The McMansion McDestroyer tier. Oh, and it doesn't like me. Ignore! How do I get it to ignore the stupid spelling thing? I like this spelling. Add to dictionary. Great. And by the way, I know that monks and ninjas are technically slashy, cutty, bonky classes. We're gonna exclude those because they're their own classes. They're not really just warriors. But in any case, Final Fantasy II doesn't really have classes. Firion, and everyone else for that matter, levels up just by doing stuff. You get hit, HP goes up. You whack, you gain strength, etc. So while I could say there are no warriors, I'm just gonna drop these guys into Lumberjack, because they're all about how you invest in them, and no one is really unique. The warrior class isn't broken. Final Fantasy III, though, we're gonna have some complications because there are a lot of smasher face-in jobs to talk about, starting with the warrior. And they're just sword wielders, basically. And they can certainly cut you, but when you compare it to really every other class, they're not gonna be a class that I want to use at the end of the game. And that's because this game loves to give you a job and then later just give you a strict upgrade of that job. And that completely invalidates the prior one. So I'm just gonna say Expert Slap Fighter for these guys because they're useful at the beginning of the game. But once again, the upgrade, the knight, is actually pretty good. They get a little bit of white magic, they can use powerful swords, they also get the cover ability, and this ability lets them take physical attacks for any ally who's in critical health status. And this skill is actually pretty great. There are a lot of squishy mage units in this game, and you kind of need mages in this game because the game is built and balanced around that, and the knight takes physical damage for them, allowing your team to function better. And that white magic rounds things out, so I'm gonna put them in the McMansion McDestroyer tier. But then we also get the Viking class, and oh God, this complicates things because they do literally my favorite activity besides gaming. Okay, my second favorite activity. Okay, actually, I really enjoy swimming. Okay, my third favorite activity, provoking my enemies. Of course, the provoke ability only exists in the 3D remake version, but just keep in mind, I'm taking the most powerful version of these classes. Anyway, this ability increases the chance of an enemy attacking your Viking and decreases that enemy's defense. And this includes single target magic attacks. So the Viking protects your characters and helps them do more damage. But then in the Pixel Remaster version, the Viking took 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Provoke became draw attacks. So the Viking now draws only physical attacks, but draws them in from all enemies. But magical attacks can still hit whoever. And I think this is just a side grade, but I guess the Viking also gets a huge increase to defense when it's below 25% of its maximum HP, so they can do their job even better. But whichever one you think is better, I'm still going to put the Viking into the lumberjack tier. Part of that is just personal style. If you kill an enemy with excellent damage, you don't need to protect your allies. So I think it's stronger to just do damage unless you're going to tank really effectively. But I think that the Dark Knight is where things get interesting because this is one of my favorite classes in Final Fantasy. And it might not really belong on this list, but I think it does. So I'm going to put it on this list. It's my video. But let me know in the comments if you think it belongs in another video. I can put it in another video too if I need to. In fact, we might actually just have another video only about the Dark Knight class. It probably won't be like a best of. There aren't that many Dark Knights. But anyway, you get what I mean. The Dark Knight is all about damage. In the 3D remaster, it can use Soul Eater to sacrifice 20% of its HP to attack all enemies, and regardless of what row the Dark Knight is in, it does the same damage. That means you don't have to choose between offense and defense. You just have to have a healer to help you stay topped up on HP. And let's be real, in this game, you're probably going to have some sort of healer. So you're not losing anything by sacrificing their HP to do more damage. And in the Pixel remaster, the Dark Knight gets Blade Blitz, which is a physical attack that attacks all enemies but is a little bit less powerful. And the 3D remaster Dark Knight, to me, really is that girl. So I'm going to put this guy into World Ender to be able to sit in the back row and spam excellent damage, which, by the way, can exceed the damage cap, is incredibly useful. So, okay, we now have one contender for Best Warrior, but there are two more warrior classes in this game. And the first is Freelancer. This is the starting class in the 3D remake of the game, I think? No, wait. No, that's Onion Knight. Oh god, I'm getting their different remakes confused. Anyway, they can do just about everything. They can use magic, and they can equip most weapons and armor. However, their stats suck, so these guys are going to go into the paper cut tier. But then there's the Onion Knight, which is cool. I love onions. I eat them like apples sometimes. They are delicious. These guys have great stats, but unfortunately, they have no abilities. But they don't really need them since they can also use the onion equipment, and this just absolutely skyrockets their damage. And you don't have to put all of your characters into this class, so even though they're kind of limited, they still go into the World Ender tier. Final Fantasy IV, of course, an absolute banger of a game. It has an absolute banger of a warrior, Cecil. He's hot, he's horny for some cane, and he's 21, which is perfect because that's the perfect age for me to ghost him on Grindr because I would literally throw out my back if we full of apathy initially. He is a Dark Knight, so he gets the Darkness ability where he sacrifices his HP and he does damage to all enemies. And this ability is actually great, except in the hardest part of his path, it's essentially useless because undead enemies resist it. So I'm gonna put him in the lumberjack tier. But then Cecil finds Jesus. And in case you're wondering, Jesus was inside Cecil, which he also is in all. And he becomes a paladin. And Paladin Cecil is actually great. His physical attacks are incredible, and he gets some white magic. And while this white magic isn't that useful in battle because the power of his white magic is kinda low, it is very useful outside of battle because this can help you preserve the MP of your other white mages. Oh, I should put him in the current topic. Whoops. So this guy goes into the McMansion Destroyer tier, but unfortunately, a very nice guy who does not go into this tier is Sid. And I feel like I should make an entire video just about the Sids of Final Fantasy. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would want. But anyway, he has a hammer or a wrench or something, and he bops stuff. He basically gets a free scan ability as well, but most enemies in this game telegraph their weaknesses reasonably well, so honestly, he's mid and an expert at slap fighting. And finally, Edward. Edward's kind of weird. He's a bard, but honestly, he really doesn't have any actual magic ability. I guess he's sort of a chemist. He can use potions on the entire party, but his specialty is that if he's low on health, he runs away. He just hides out, and then if everybody else lives, then he gains levels with them, but if everybody else is dead, he eventually has to come out, and then he usually just dies because he's super weak. And so if he counts in this at all, he's gonna go directly into the paper cut tier. And that's kind of fitting because he's a musician, so you can imagine he just turns the pages of his music and then those pages cut you. Okay, that was stupid, but you get it, right? Final Fantasy V, though, this game has some firepower because we now get another job system and we can mix and match pairs of abilities. So let's kick things off with the Knight. And honestly, you start off with this class and it's a bargain barrel offering. He attack, he'd protect. If you were a pirate, he'd swab the deck, but don't buy a boat. Don't do it, little girl. This knight gets a couple of useful skills. The cover passive protects allies in critical condition, and the defend command makes the character impervious to physical attacks. So if you know an enemy is going to physical attack, you use defend, and the knight can actually make a critically damaged team invincible. And the knight gets the two-handed ability, letting them deal double damage by wielding one weapon in both hands at the cost of a shield. That means they can use just one copy of an extremely powerful weapon to go on full offense. This is in contrast to dual wield, which allows characters to hold one weapon in each hand. And while that's definitely stronger, two-handed is better early in the game. Sadly though, their other abilities are just related to equipping stuff, so they lose out on a bunch of potential power. So they are just very effective lumberjacks. But finally, we actually get a new job, the Berserker, and these guys are very complicated, so I just need you to get out a pen and paper and get ready to take notes. Are you ready? Do you have your pen? Do you have your paper? Are you ready to write? They whack stuff. That's it. They are immune to confuse, and their base attack damage is increased by 50%. However, you can't input commands for them, so they might attack an enemy in the back row and do less damage. Enemies with counter can just wreck them, or just they can attack enemies when everyone is at low health or dead and you need to heal. And they're slow, though their longevity is good. But they are not the one that I want to be the last man standing. So they're going to go into the lumberjack tier despite being very powerful. And the final warrior from the original game is the samurai, and in terms of whacking, their damage is kind of similar to the knight, but their critical hit rate is far better. And they also have a skill called Ayanuki. While this won't help against bosses, it is extremely effective against mobs with a lot of health because it takes 2 turns to execute, but it deals instant death to all enemies. And the cherry on top is Zenanage, or Guild Toss. By using the power of capitalism, no wait, they're seizing the means of production and distributing money to the poor, so by seizing the power of socialism, you can make it rain. Anyway, they go into the McMansion McDestroyer tier. Because I actually lied, this is not the final class in the game. We gotta talk about the Freelancer. They get all passive abilities for master jobs, they can equip any abilities they want, they get the maximum stat boost from every job, they can equip any equipment piece, and they are just all around completely broken. And I need to actually make a new tier because this class is just universe ending. But is it the strongest? Well, let's move on to Final Fantasy VI. Just to be clear, once again, everyone can do everything. But we're going to stick with the ones who have innate physical characteristics and aren't something else. So Locke, he's a thief. We're not ranking him here. And Terra and Celis are innate mages. We're not going to rank them here either. I didn't actually put this one in the Universe Ender tier. It's got to go up to that Universe Ender tier right there. But I can rank Cyan. This sword dude is actually quite powerful, and his Bushido skills are useful. Sort of. Magic is kind of a dominating force in this game that just overtakes everything that everyone can do. His first skill, Dispatch, can one-shot most things, but unfortunately, all of his other skills force you to wait to use them, and the enemies can just whack you while you sit in the menu. He can also still use magic, but his magic stat is in the garbage, and it's probably better to just use someone else, so he's a slap fighter. Sorry, baby. But it does get a little bit better with Edgar, and I know that you could call Edgar a machinist, and in the early game, that is how he's best used. And I suppose he's also one of the 2 characters who has access to spears as well. So you could say he's a Dragoon, but I'm not going to say that because his best position is using the supreme power of whacking whacking stuff with his 2 swords later in the game. The Genji Glove lets him equip 2 weapons, the Offering lets him attack 4 times in a turn, and he can equip the best swords in the game. So I think, like the other characters that can do this, he does go into the world-ending tier, but does not quite escape into the stratosphere. And Yeti Umaro will not be receiving the same privilege. All he can do is attack. He's basically another berserker like in Final Fantasy V. So that means that all the utility you get from your materia, all the utility you get from your Esper users in the game is just kind of lost on him. So he's gonna slap you to death, you snow-blowing piece of... Final Fantasy VII provides us with a couple more potent whackers. Sephiroth is clearly out despite being playable, but you're still welcome to mention this hottie in the comments because woof, baby. But Cloud does count, and Cloud, I mean, he is in the sky, baby. He's just like everyone else with the big balls and the unmoving hair and the big dick. And with his Omni Slash, he can handily outdamage many of the other characters in the game. And if you've watched NG Plus's FF7 with only limit breaks video, you know exactly what this monster is capable of. With counter and mime, he can just spam his limit break over and over until everything dies. You know, if it's not already destroyed by the first one. So as you probably already guessed, he is ending the universe. And while Barrett could be classed as a gunner, you can also just slap a melee weapon on him. His limit break hits for a lot less power, so he's gonna slot neatly into the very sexy lumberjack tier. Though technically, I guess if he's completely maxed out, he can do more damage than Cloud can with his limit break. So I guess I'm gonna put him into McMansion Destroyer. That's fine. Final Fantasy VIII, though, does have a bit more nuance because we can talk about two pugilistic pals here, Squall and Irvine. And Squall's limit break is great. He deals 4 to 8 hits with Renzo Kuken, and then he gets to use a finishing move. And if he has his best weapon, he can use Lionheart, which handily outdamages just about everyone else in the game, except maybe Angelo's Shooting Star. I haven't really done the calculations. I don't really care because the Lionheart finisher is inherently unpredictable. You can increase the chance of any finishing move activating by being at a high crisis level, but I believe Lionheart has a 25% activation rate no matter what, assuming a finishing move activates. And so because of that, Squall is gonna destroy some McMansions. But Irvine, this is a different story. Irvine's limit break is completely controllable. During his limit break, he takes pot shots with various types of ammo, and depending on how high his crisis level is, which is determined by his HP, status effects he's afflicted with, and whether he has the aura status, the amount of time he has to take shots can be up to 26 seconds. And it's relatively easy for each of his shots to max out at 9999, allowing him to break the damage cap with relative ease. However, there's still a problem, and the problem is something that I mentioned in the Best Monk video. I'll link that in the Discridly-Do. The true universe ender in this game is Zell. Zell's limit break has a time limit, but he can deal much more damage than Irvine because his limit break is completely based on your ability to input button commands. Irvine's shots, on the other hand, each take a fixed amount of time to activate, and they will eat up his time bar regardless of what you do. So he is in the world ender tier. He did not quite make the cut, but Final Fantasy IX Steiner loves to cut stuff with a sword because that's his weapon. You guys, transitions are hard. Give me a break here. Anyway, Steiner's main job is polishing his massaging his meat. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be good. Choking the Sorry. He does get some cool elemental sword abilities, and his trance multiplies his physical damage ×3. I know this because I beat Final Fantasy IX with only him, so Discridly-Do. Finessing his fat, he destroys McMansions. With a new console comes a new power level, and Final Fantasy X did not disappoint. So first up is Yu. At least that's how they pronounce his name in-game. And Yu has some cool stuff going on. Just FYI for 10, I'm going to talk mainly about the abilities on each character's predetermined path, but I will consider what it means if you max them out. Anyway, Titus, in addition to his smashing abilities, has time magic, which is actually extremely useful. And while the damage of his limit breaks, his most potent source of damage, can be maxed out, it generally has a pretty limited power level when compared to some of the other boys on the list because he gets fewer hits. That means that at max power, other characters can do more damage than he can, so I'm gonna put him into the McMansion McDestroyer tier. Auron, on the other hand, gets mainly breaking abilities that decrease the attack power or defense of enemies. And unfortunately, bosses tend to be immune to these, so he definitely loses some points there. And even worse, his main sphere grid really lacks speed, so this means he's just not gonna get any actions during the main game. And even worse, none of his limit breaks deal more than 2 hits of damage, ultimately making him one of the weaker characters in Final Fantasy X. So while he can still do what everyone else can do, he's gonna go into the paper cutter tier. But Waka, while a racist piece of poo-poo, has huge balls. Sorry. I've just been anticipating this stupid line for the entire frickin' video. Just balls. But if you have, love, want, or even just acknowledge the existence of balls, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel because it is overflowing with balls. And also content. And also, I just need to stop talking. Subscribe. It's free and it supports me. Thank you. Balls. Yes, Waka can do everything, but his slots allow him to do 16 hits of damage, and he can ultimately max those 16 hits to do some of the biggest damage numbers in the game. But along with big balls and big PP damage come big super bosses with gargantuan HP totals. But still, Waka is a world ender, and maybe Lulu will help him drain his balls later, you know, as long as he's washed them first. But anyway, Final Fantasy XII is a bit less orb focused, if you know what I mean. And the classes in question are the Foebreaker, the Knight, and the Bushi. I'm gonna leave out the Ninja and Dragoon-like classes because we'll deal with those another day, and also this is probably the game I'm least confident about, just saying. The Knight is kind of similar to the class of the same name in earlier versions. It gets a little bit of white magic, it uses swords, but I think this class kind of has a leg up compared to other Knights. The secondary classes allow for more potent magic, and time magic can be nice for support. This can create a physical brawler that can multitask pretty gosh darn well and pretty gosh darn fast, because, you know, haste. I don't think they're broken, but they're solid, so I think I dropped them into the McMansion McDestroyer tier. I don't know. But I guess their base skills can't hit flyers, which is kind of annoying, so they need a secondary class for that. Okay, whatever. Let's drop them into Lumberjack. I don't know. Listen, you guys got to help me out with these in the comments, because I also am not sure where to put Bushi. These are the samurais of the game, and the samurai sword scales with strength and magic, and I think my favorite thing the Bushi gets is the Shades of Black technique. This basically just lets them cast random black magic on a foe for free. But is that broken? I think I would rather have a black or red mage so I can choose their spell, but I guess if you combine this class with a mage, it could be quite useful due to the split scaling. But I actually don't like the split scaling of strength and magic on their swords. One is better because then you could focus their abilities. I'm gonna say Lumberjack for this one too. And the Foebreaker I also think is a Lumberjack. I guess it's good. You know what? I'm just gonna put all of these guys into a new tier. And that tier is gonna be the I don't fucking know tier. Okay. Oh God, what color should it be? We're gonna drop them all in there. You guys let me know what you think in the comments, and also let me know about Final Fantasy 11 and 14 classes. I don't play MMOs, so I'm just gonna drop them in the I don't fucking know tier as well, because I don't fucking know. I really don't. I have no idea. You guys should just fight about it. That's fun. But okay, Final Fantasy 13 actually is kind of interesting. The Commando class in this game is actually pretty great. This game focuses on building a chain and staggering the enemy, which increases damage, and the Ravager is the one who largely increases the meter, and they're kind of like the mages of the game, but the Commando's attacks make the meter's value decrease less quickly, which is pretty important if you want to stagger the enemy. But this game is all about having a balanced party, and everyone sort of just performs their role, and without Ravagers, this class really can't do much, so I think it's just gonna be in the Woodcutter, the Lumberjack tier. It's good. It's good. And now we're nearing the end of the main series with Final Fantasy XV's Noctis and Final Fantasy XV's Clive, and maybe I'm gonna make you all angry.
What now?
Noctis and Clive, they're really canonically powerful, but they're just nothing special in terms of gameplay. It takes them forever to do anything, especially to the bigger monsters in the game. So I am gonna put them in the McMansion McDestroyer tier just because of like canon reasons. They're not the best though, and you know, we're gonna just move on. So with all that being said, the best warrior will have to wait until we talk about tactics. Tactics has a ton of warriors, and we're gonna rapid fire through the first few. The Squire is the first one, and it is a paper cutter. And that's by design. It's a base class, but I will talk a little bit more about this class in a minute, so hang on for that. And next we have the Knight, and that's gonna go directly into the Lumberjack tier. It destroys equipment, which is useful, but it's just too slow to be really impactful. But the Samurai is great. It has a lot of cool abilities that it gets from weapons, but its weapons are kind of sparse, like actually really difficult to get in some cases, and they're just annoying to find, and honestly, they're just not a world ender, so they're going to go into the lumberjack tier. The Dark Knight was added in War of the Lions as a playable class, but that was originally just the NPC Gafgarian. And as you'll see, it is a great class, but definitely not the best one, like not even close. So it's going to go into the McMansion McDestroyer tier. It's going to hang out there for a little bit. And then the Onion Knight has huge power, but no abilities, which is cool. But this game has other warriors that just completely break it apart. So I'm going to put the Onion Knight into the Lumberjack tier. I just don't think it's that useful. But now we are at the unique classes, so buckle up. It's going to get crazy because this game introduced several unique knights, all of which have unique abilities. Now, even though they don't really fit the class of warrior, I'm going to include Rafa and Malak, the Heaven and Hell Knight. They have Knight in the name, that sort of makes them a warrior, but wow, they are awful. Their skills deal damage a random number of times in a random area of 5 squares. So in the hardest fights in the game, they'll often just whiff. Rafa does have the lowest fixed Brave stat in the game though, which I guess makes her the best character to run around and grab hidden items, which maybe I'll talk about in a video about weird Final Fantasy mechanics. Comment below if you want to see that, because, you know, we might do it. I am completely fascinated by weird mechanics in video games. So yeah. Anyway, they're both going to go into the paper cut tier because they're just not that good. And the next two knights are Agrius and Meliadul, the Holy Knight and the Divine Knight. And Agrius has some cool area of effect abilities, one of which can cause stop, but there is another knight that blows her out of the water. And Meliadul can break equipment and deal massive damage when she does, but again, another knight blows her out of the water. So they're both going to go into the McMansion McDestroyer tier because they are very good. But the knight that blows them out of the water is Cid, also known as Orlandu, because this fucker is truly broken. They gave all of Agrius's abilities and Meliadul's abilities to him, and they gave him all of the Dark Knight abilities. So basically, he can do it all. But it doesn't end there because they also natively gave him a ridiculously high attack stat, and that is what determines the damage of his skills. And this allows him to completely destroy any enemy you come across once you get him. He is solidly in the Universe Ender tier. And we're not even done with the unique knights yet, because now we have to talk about Beowulf. With his Spellblade ability, specifically his chicken ability, he is literally the scariest unit in the game to any non-boss monster, because the chicken ability lowers an enemy's Brave stat by 50, and the Brave stat controls a ton in tactics. First, it increases the damage of fists, knight swords, and katanas, which is impactful but not game-breaking. And I mentioned before that a lower Brave stat makes you more likely to get rare weapons from item spots, which is also cool but not game-breaking. But it also influences the activation of reaction abilities. For every 1 Brave you have, there is a 1% increased chance of activating a reaction like Counter or Blade Grasp. Really good, so really good to lower this stat on enemies. But the Brave stat does one more thing. It makes you brave. Okay, maybe not specific enough. It prevents you from being chicken. Okay, that sounds like the same thing, but it is not. If a non-boss character's Brave level goes below 10, they literally turn into a chicken. They can't do anything except run away from enemies, and they get 1 Brave point back every turn. And when a character is a chicken, they take increased damage from attacks. So you make it so they can't do anything. You have more time to kill them, convince them to join your team so you can steal their equipment, or just hang out on Old McDonald's farm. Look, chickens are cute. I get it. Unfortunately, though, bosses are immune to the chicken status, and that means I cannot put Beowulf any higher than the World Ender tier. So we have just 2 more to go, and the first is easy peasy. Cloud is a McMansion destroyer. He needs a special sword to use his abilities, and it's on top of a volcano, and I hate it, but once you get it, he's great. Nothing really special though, other characters can basically do what he does. But now we have to circle back to the Squire class, because there are 2 characters, Ramza and Luso, who have special Squire classes in tactics. And while they are slightly different because Luso gets something more than Ramza does, he can capture animals with no effort, they get 1 ability that puts them head and shoulders above everyone in the game, Shout. And this ability does 4 things. First, it increases Brave by 10, doing all of those brave things that we talked about before. Rewind if you need to see it again. Second, it increases both physical and magical attack power by 1. And wow, that is totally broken, isn't it? Yes, it is, and we haven't even gotten to the best part, because this ability also increases speed by a point. And speed is, without a doubt, the most important statistic in tactics. Speed directly determines the number of turns you get compared to your enemies. So after a few shouts, they'll get twice as many turns as enemies. And after a few more, they'll get 4 times as many. And enemies won't get to move at all. But we're not even done yet, because they also gave these 2 squires the Yell ability, which increases a teammate's speed. This means Luso and Ramza can boost themselves and then increase the speed of the entire party extremely fast. And their abilities put them solidly in the Universe Ender tier. But I guess I haven't answered the question I asked in the title, have I? Well, the best warrior in Final Fantasy is without a doubt Ramza and Luso. It's not even close. But I will give it to Luso, because he can capture enemies with his native class and Ramza can't, and we are not even going to bother talking about the other tactics games. No one is as broken as these two. And by the way, you should probably watch all of the comparative videos in this series, because they are all right here and they are awesome. But you could also just watch all of my Final Fantasy videos, including my challenge runs, if you click this playlist right here. You know, if it suits you. Which it should. They're also awesome. Let me know in the comments what you think about these classes, and bye-bye.